touched that nature? How many people have touched that essence? Before I explain, let me tell you three things. There are three things that corrupts. One is men. Two is the systems of this world. Three is spirits, demonic spirits. These are the three things that have the power to corrupt. Men, the systems of this world, and demonic spirit. If you make contact with evil men, they will corrupt you. Unless you have the power to change them or transform them. If you make contact with the systems of this world, it will corrupt you. Unless you have the power to transform it. If you make contact with demonic spirit, they will corrupt you. Unless you have the power to deal with them. But of these three things, there are three other infrastructures that handles them. Love deals with the corruption that flow from men. That's why in dealing with mortals, the only way you can keep yourself pure is when you are enveloped in love. And how do you enter into this kind of love? It's a love that is outside of self. That kind of love is not a love born out of reason. You give me this, so I'm supposed to give you this. That's not the kind of love. It's an unconditional kind of love. It's a love of power. It's a love imparted by God. Jesus said, this commandment have I received from my Father. I have the power to lay down my life and to take it up again. It's a love that exists outside the boundary of self. And until a man contacts God, he can't know that kind of love. That's why in 2 Corinthians 5:14, he said the love of Christ constrains us. For we don't judge that if one died for all, then they that live should no longer live unto themselves, but for him that died for them. This is the first way to alter the nature of a man. It brings that man to a point where he knows it is wrong for him to live for himself. Reason for that man becomes life for God and life for others. And until a man reaches that level, he can't bring transformation. Because everything he does for you, there is gain in it. That's United Nations type of love. So they intervene because there is gain. They intervene because there is something to receive. It's not God's kind of love. That's the world system. But when you enter this economy of love, it becomes unconditional. And until a man reaches that depth in God, he can't bring transformation. As you see him laboring, he's pursuing something. He's either pursuing ambition, pursuing fame, pursuing money. You will not know until you give him power. I told you, power is the agency of transformation. But power is also what reveals your nature. So you see people saying, we are tired, give him power. And you'll be shocked. That is not tired. What he's actually saying is that you have done your own, I want to do my own. The first thing that must happen to us is to encounter love, so that we take off concerning the former conversation, the old man. That's when we can change others. How many times have you done something for God and for others and you were not part of the equation? Go and check. That's a generation that can bring change. That's a generation that can bring transformation. A generation that lives for God and for others. It's not something you want to do. It's not something you desire to do. It's something you are empowered to do. But how do you enter into this corridor? It's by communion with the Holy Ghost. In Romans 5 verse 5, it said the love of Christ is shed abroad in our heart by his Spirit. If we don't learn to walk with God, we can't bring change to our world. Power will not give us the ability to bring change to our world. It's our communion with God that will give us the ability to bring change. See, the thrones that we are fighting, they are not just occupied by men. They are occupied by princes in darkness. There is no throne except a prince coronates it. There is no government except a prince institutes it. There have never been any throne that is not ruled by a spirit. The first and oldest civilization we know is Egypt. And Egypt, you think it was ruled by Pharaoh until God stepped down. In Exodus chapter 12 verse 12, he said, this night I will go down to Egypt and I will judge the gods of Egypt. When he judged the gods of Egypt, Pharaoh hands stopped. So you would think it's about a man, it's beyond him. There's a spirit on that throne. And until you enter into the economy of law, because the way this spirit will manipulate you is to look around your lust, is to look around yourself. What is that thing that you want to preserve? That is where their bargain comes. The spirit will bargain with you from the point of your lust. But when you enter into love, you have gone outside of lust. That's why in 1 John chapter 2 verse 15, he said, love not the world. They that love the world, the love of the Father is not in them. The same way, if you love the Father, the love of the world is not in you. So when the spirit comes to negotiate with you, there's no ground. There's no even ground. He said, the prince of this world cometh to me and findeth nothing. That was why Jesus brought change. If there was any ground of possible negotiation, Jesus would have betrayed the generation. But there was no ground. That is because he functioned by love. It's a love that exists outside of self. It's not taught. It's not communicated in the Bible school. It's imparted in the presence. The love of Christ is shared abroad in our hearts by the Spirit. If we don't learn to walk with God, we can't change our world. What we are demanding for will only be a function of time. The cycle will turn back. And when the Spirit evaluates it carefully and they discover the easiest thing to do now is to allow these people power, they will allow us power and compromise our nature. Because what they know is that after 10 years, we will come back to that cycle. Because they will check and there will be many things that they can trade with. They will check and there will be many grounds where trading can take place. So if they see that it's more difficult to refuse us power than to give us power, they will give us power. But they will come back to negotiate on the ground where lust rules. And if that ground is taken, after 10 years, we will journey back. But that will not happen because a generation of lovers of God are rising. That's why the prayer work is important. It's not just carrying placards and say, give us power. No. Why Joshua was on the ground fighting, Moses and Aaron and Hur were on the mountain. The balance must be there. Because if you have not loved God, you can't love others. If you have not loved God, you can't change others. When you take it, it will be about yourself and your family. And from within, there will be crisis. Have you seen people that advocate for power? And why they receive power, from among their camp, they begin to fight. Because love had not entered. And this truth we must teach in the house of God. Because it is our duty to teach our generation the ways of God. The government of this world is on our shoulders. So we must teach the world how it is done. It is time to take power. It is time for the new Nigeria to be born. But lovers of God are the only ones who can carry that burden. If you still have a challenge communing with God, there's a problem. Because you can't handle the mantle. You can't handle it. It will be too heavy for you. If that mantle come and you see 10 billion, you will throw it away. Because you will not see it as a responsibility to your generation. You will see it as an opportunity for you to save yourself. It will become self-preservation, self-aggrandizement, self-exaltation. So while we fight to take over, we must fight also to take over from within. What is it that motivates you? What is it that pushes you? What is it that inspires your action? You see, somebody said the problem of African leadership is that we always come into leadership by struggle. So we are not taught. Now there's an energy manipulating everybody. When that energy is lifted, who are we? When the fight and the struggle is over, who are we? That's why sometimes we must go back and ask God to help us. And then we tell him, if you give it to us, we will not disappoint you. Help us from within. Agents of transformation are lovers of God. The devil knows what is happening in the spirit now. They are checking the balances and finding their best option. If we don't give these people power, what will happen after 5 years? Okay, if we allow them to take this power, what will happen after 10 years? They are checking the one that suits them more. And if they discover over time that if giving us power is better, they will give us power, but they will make sure hoodlums take over. Have you not seen our government? And that's why I need to teach us about power tomorrow. So you know we need apostles in government now. The time when every apostle is on the altar is over. We need more apostles on the government than on the altar. The apostles on the altar are trainers. The apostles in the government are the ones doing the work. We need more prophets in the government. We need more prophets in the economic front. Men that can sit down and see the stock market and say, do this, do this, do this. Not because they read it, they saw it in the spirit.